Okay, since those of you who got here at 1:30, let's reward you by you get the first shot at in this open discussion session. We had a lot of good discussion in the small breakouts, and the report outs were great. Obviously, there was a lot more detail in those group discussions that we will be trying to capture in some way. But I really appreciate all the discussion and the creative thinking on new approaches, concerns with the different mandatory approaches, and things like that. So right now what we really have is nothing more structured than an open discussion where you get the mic, and if you're going on for 10 or 15 minutes, I'm going to ask you to stop. But we'd like to give everybody a chance to say their piece, and then if we still have time at the end and you want to say more, that'd be fine as well. So other people will wander in. Who would like to say something poignant, pertinent? Alan. And again, please speak into the mic for purposes of the webinar and identify yourself and your affiliation.
My name's Alan Blake and I'm with the Packaging Consortium. A lot of our membership is based in Canada, and so we have a lot of experience of EPR in Canada. We have a lot of US-based members who don't have any experience of EPR and actually don't want any. But just a couple of comments. EPR is on your doorstep in Canada. They've been at it for a long time. And they have diversion recovery rates that are around about 55%. They're after 75% as well. And they are flatlining. More and more investment is going into the program, but they're not getting the results. So there's some learning opportunities to learn from their experiences and what they're trying to do to modify their programs. And an interesting program to look at, and I believe obviously you've had a look at, is British Columbia. It rolled out in May of this year, and it is the only full EPR program in Canada, in that it is funded, designed, and operated by industry. So there is something that's going to be an interesting benchmark in terms of what progress they can make in terms of increasing diversion rates. And they look at every individual material and understand what the opportunities and consequences are for that material type. So some sensible things they've done. Glass does not go into their recycling system. It goes into deposits systems. And then you can get color separation more readily, and you can get recycling more readily of an infinitely recyclable material rather than mixed cullet going into asphalt. So it's about getting value out of the systems that you have. And that's what has to happen here. You need to look at every material, every opportunity, and how you can get value out of it. If you don't do that, then you'll lose the value opportunities. So those are just some thoughts there to get the conversation going. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Anybody wish to respond to that or add something different? Again, this is sort of open mic. And we'll keep it open for a while. I'm also happy to close the workshop early. Somebody had to fill the silence.
My wife tells me I'm good at filling silences. One of the questions I had, which
Can you ID yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry. Joe Gershon with Encore Biorenewables. I spoke with Cynthia before we started and asked her about wax-coated boxes and why they weren't included in old corrugated cardboard in collection. And she had an explanation. I forget what it was right now, but I do have that general question because we know that there's quite a lot of corrugated cardboard that goes to landfills because they're coated with paraffin. And there's actually, my company is involved in a paraffin alternative wax that enables boxes to be recycled, and so would keep them from the landfills. And so, there's some pretty compelling statistics about the boxes that would be kept from landfills. certainly in California, but really everywhere, because more than 50% of produce is grown in California for the entire country, and so a lot of that produce finds its way into wax boxes that then find their way around the country and around the world, not just in California, but also California has roughly 10% of the U.S. population, and so depending on how you want to look at the metrics, the Fiber Box Association says there's 1.5 roughly million tons, about 5 to 8% of all corrugated boxes are coated in wax, currently paraffin, which is a petroleum product which renders those boxes unrecyclable. So if those could be kept from landfill, one would argue that if half the produce is grown in California, perhaps half of that volume is deployed in or is used in California. If you want to look at a population basis, it might be 10%, but somewhere between 150 and 750,000 tons of OCC that would previously have gone to landfill because coated with wax could be kept from the landfills, and I'm just wanting to point that out. How can we include that in the mix? Thank you.
Yeah, well, this is Cynthia. Just real briefly to comment. Part of the challenge in looking at the specific products in the disposal stream was that we had to use the existing waste characterization data. So I was really using a category that was existing. So that's the only reason why it was that term and not including the waxed coated. So it's definitely noted, and we'll see what kind of data we can pull for the waxed coated as well, because it's valid. I'd have to look and see. It may be that we have that data that we can tease out. It might not just be reported in our final report, and as well, it might be something that we're teasing out for the one that's currently underway.
And to the extent that you have some quantitative information on production, and if you can share that with us, and that goes for anybody who's got information on a particular product type, please feel free to share it, and we need to use the mic. So, okay, well, let me come back over here just to finish that off. Stay there, Jim.
Okay. Sorry, yeah, and a potential redemption value too, if that could be another way to look at it. With the wax boxes, there could be a redemption value, and that would encourage the use of an alternative, which would then render those boxes recyclable.
Tim Goodman with NatureWorks. I think to take a phrase that you had used earlier, Cynthia, in terms of let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, I think when we look at programs like this, several things come to mind, one being don't squash innovation, and the packaging of today may or may not be the packaging of tomorrow. The other thing related to that is that if you're looking at growing to 75%, not only are there potential opportunities further down the road for biomaterials like PLA to be recycled, recovered and recycled, and we are doing some work around that now, you're also going to have to be looking at organics diversion. And there's a lot of packaging, be it compostable plastics or paper, that are going to be used as a way to divert food waste away from disposal to composting. I would also add one last thing, and that is that change, as we all know, is inevitable. Change happens. And I would venture to guess that if we were having this discussion 30 years ago, there would be people in this room who would be pointing to that new material, PET, or HDPE, that's really screwing things up. So again, don't squelch innovation, and take a stand on materials neutrality, because I think that's where you're going to get potentially more industry involvement and success.
Thank you. Boy, everybody had lunch. Now it's nap time. or you said your piece during the small group sessions. John, did you? I see. Go ahead.
I guess I
John,
had
please-
more of a.
please ID
Oh, I'm
your-
sorry, John Katz with EPA Region 9. I just had a follow-on, which I thought that was a great historical note about the packaging of the future is not the packaging of today. I'm wondering if there's a way that we can think through or be smart about how you encourage innovation but discourage the externalities or the potential unknown consequences of those innovations, whether it is shrink wrap labels, full body shrink wrap labels on HDPE bottles that now render them hard to recycle. That's an innovation, but it had a consequence, an environmental consequence. PLA, as I understand it, if it gets into a PET recycling stream, that's an innovation, but it can have a consequence. So I don't know what the answer is. That's why I'm just throwing it out there as a question. Is there a way that you can have a system that it channels innovation towards environmental outcomes that we can agree are good, and tries to at least minimize or maybe even anticipate some of those that we want to avoid? I don't know what the answer to that is.
Excuse me. Excuse me. One moment. We need to get you a mic.
So we've been saying this for a year now, and it doesn't seem to be sinking into people. We are out of PLA beverage bottles in North America. If there are any out there, it's from old stock that someone has. So I get a little tired when people, and I apologize for being a little upset about this, but I get a little tired when people say we're contaminating the PET stream. We're 0.01% of the stream. You're probably getting more contamination from PVC and polystyrene. So again, with all due respect, I disagree with what you have to say.
Anybody else want to say anything? Mike, go ahead.
I heard a lot from a lot of
You need
people.
to ID yourself, Mike.
Oh, I'm Mike Muhajir with the LA County Task Force. Really, my question comes up, local government, bureaucrats, and then we all talk about what we want to do and what we'd like to see and what we have done. I just want to know what the industry is willing to do to help CalRecycle and local government to achieve that 75%.
And we have some industry folks in here. I don't know if you want to take that on, but we're certainly willing to listen. I think we heard some this morning and this afternoon, or in the small breakouts as to what people think, but it's a good question. And I'll remind folks while the mic's going over to Alan that, in terms of innovation, I think last year's workshop, in prepping for that, Cynthia and others of us met with a lot of manufacturers. There are many, many great innovative ideas and products, and a lot of source reduction, lots of different kinds of packaging. We want to learn more about that. We've continued to meet with folks. At the same time, from a CalRecycle perspective, we're looking at this in terms of the 75% goal and what's in the landfill. And regardless of how much innovation there is, we're not seeing enough being not ending up in landfills. So that's our issue. That's why we're having this discussion from a CalRecycle perspective. So how do we mesh those? Those are some of the ideas that we're seeking. Alan.
So Alan Blake again, the Packaging Consortium. Industry is looking for and offering collaboration, transparent collaboration across the entire value chain, to have the discussions with a life cycle approach so that people understand the consequences and the opportunities across the value chain rather than a particular element of the value chain. So if you have informed discussion, then you can start making better decisions. You can start making better design decisions that have consequences throughout the value chain that give you a better outcome. And then open to looking for innovation and collaboration that will be inclusive of all materials, because all materials have value. And the reality is that our waste management system can sort anything. It can sort anything and everything. It can sort anything and everything and separate anything and everything. But if there's no value there, that you can't offset the cost of doing that, then of course you end up with large residuals. So that's our opportunity, through collaboration, through understanding, looking at the value we can get from all the materials that go in. And then we'll actually have more materials coming in and getting more value out. And then you won't have discussions about mixed plastic laminates being unrecyclable. You'll be talking about the fact that they use 90% less material. You've taken 3 steps forward, maybe 2 steps back, but you're 1 step ahead. You keep on having that sort of discussion and collaboration, innovation and investment in infrastructure will come along, and then you'll have the materials of the future that you'll be able to include in a proactive way and get more proactive outcomes. Sounds wonderful, but it's a journey. And so we have to accept that there are going to be compromises on that journey. And if we accept compromises, we'll make progress. If we don't make compromises, then we'll start trying to exclude valuable materials and we won't get the results that we're looking for. But absolutely, industry's looking for transparent, open collaboration.
Could you take that a step further and define for me what that means? What is collaboration? What gets put on the table in terms of
Sure.
Achievable goals and financing and whatever else is needed in a system like that? What does that look like?
It's getting people together, looking at what the common problems are and looking for solutions. And then you get things like the closed loop fund come up. You have the curbside value partnership, looking at private, public funding to increase recycling in communities that don't have curbside collection. So it's going to be an array of things, but you need an array of things to start looking for success stories. In Canada, that conversation has to happen because it's legislated, it's mandated, and therefore industry works with municipalities to find solutions. So for instance, single-serve coffee pods, it's the new trend in coffee consumption. And all you hear is the complaint about the amount of packaging waste. Our municipalities saying we don't know how to handle these things because they drop through our system. So what you do is you get the coffee pod producers sitting down with the municipalities, looking at material developments and pod designs that will get them to a place where they can either be recycled or composted. Those are conversations that typically haven't happened in the past. Now, what we need to do is have those conversations happen earlier, and people are realizing that. So our association tries to facilitate getting the right players in the value chain coming together to have those conversations as early as possible to get better outcomes. So that's what we need to have happen, talking about design and material developments before they go on the market, with the right players who can handle the materials to get a better result. So that's just one example.
Thanks, Alan. Anybody from industry have another example? Okay. John, you look like you might want to say something, no? Okay. We won't give you the mic yet since you're just... Go ahead, up in front, Jim. Thanks.
I'll give you another example. Keith Christman from Plastics Division, American Chemistry Council. Another area of collaboration I think that could be expanded on was a partnership with Sustainable Packaging Coalition, ACC, and others around polyethylene film recycling that can be expanded. I think the report had polyethylene film lumped in with other kinds of plastics, but polyethylene film is highly recyclable, can be brought back to stores and recycled. And so I think that's a partnership that around wrap recycling is something that could be focused on.
Tony Kingsbury, have my own consulting group. Building off of that, Citrus Heights this summer partnered with Dow Chemical and Republic Services on an interesting experiment here in California to prove out the concept of collecting the plastic films that aren't traditionally recycled. And they called it Energy Bag Program, I think, and they had a special little purple bag. But I think that's the kind of thing that, you know, would be good to publicize, see where that expands, what the opportunity is. But they took those films and turned it into an energy product. But the reality is if you get a big enough pile of that stuff, you don't have to go to energy. You can actually go to, you know, mechanical recycling. The problem is right now is that there's not enough of it, and so taking the kind of, you know, there's a lot of food contamination that comes along with that, and the energy side is a way to manage that now. But in the future, you know, if you had enough of those, you could actually go back into films or back into, you could actually recycle it back to ethylene, the monomer that polyethylene is made from, and go right back into polyethylene. So, interesting concepts.
Waiting for other hands. While we're waiting, I'll just repeat that from a CalRecycle standpoint, you know, there are lots of great innovative packaging that's being developed. There's lots of pilot programs, there's lots of good voluntary partnerships and things like that. The problem that we see is that things aren't happening fast enough. Stuff is still going into the landfill at an enormous rate. And so how do you move relatively quickly from pilots and small scale efforts to something that's large scale? Is industry going to ramp up, or does it have to be something that's mandated?
This is Patty Moore with More Recycling. I just wanted to reiterate that a letter was sent in by Blue Green on polyethylene recycling, film recycling, that I thought should be, if you haven't read it and you're interested in the public-private partnerships, to take a look at that. It was on the website.
Thanks, Patty.
Howard, we did get a comment online.
Okay, go ahead, Tracy.
Eastman Chemical is a supplier of resin that's used to make shrink labels. 2 years ago, we started an informal industry group to better understand the issues of shrink labels in PET recycling and identify potential solutions. We've had 7 meetings over the last 2 years with 50+ companies participating. The participants in this group have created new solutions that are close to commercialization, concepts and ideas that didn't exist 2 years ago. One concept was brought forth by Sun Chemical that utilizes the whole bottle wash, so labels come off very early in the process. We're looking forward to sharing more information very soon.
Great, thank you. To Eastman. Doug.
Doug Cobble, Sacramento County. I want to touch back on the landfill ban idea, and I'm strongly discouraging that idea. As a vertically integrated local government system where we collect at the curb, go all the way through transfer to disposal and single stream recycling. What we collect at the curb represents about 17% in single stream recycling. There's another about 25% goes to green waste, and the rest is still garbage in the garbage can. There's a lot of material that can be taken out of there, but we have one of the highest grade single stream programs in the state, and we're getting 17% out of our stream on that. So I would strongly encourage us not to try and ban that material. From a local government perspective, if I can't get my residents to recycle above that 17%, how am I going to get them to completely take everything out of the stream? I mean, that takes a lot of political will that may not be at the local level to enforce a outright ban.
Thanks, Doug. Others, anybody want to revisit anything from the group discussions and go into more detail on any of the different ideas, whether they were voluntary partnerships or some of the fee-based ideas? Or we'll just go with what we have on those. Yes, sir.
Hi, thank you. Joe Ackler. I'm here on behalf of our client, the SPI, the Plastics Industry Trade Association. And I'll submit our comments in writing to Cynthia, but just wanted to make one point that we're concerned that, using the data from 2008 is way behind. The plastics industry has come so much further since 2008. and not just in PET and HDPE, but all 3 through 7s. And we would just urge for before you do any completing a policy that you look at your waste characterization study from 2014. And just one other point, under plastics where you list plastics that are disposed, you have a catch-all category at the end there that lists auto parts, linoleum, vinyl, formica. Obviously, these products are not packaging. So we would respectfully request that you remove that from, and that amount is half of what you were listing as disposed plastic.
Thank you. And just in terms of the 2014 waste characterization study, we all agree. I mean, we need to get that information, update, what we've got. I don't know the exact schedule for that. I'm not sure if there's one more season of sampling. It may be completed, so I think there's going to be preliminary information sometime in the first half of 2015 with the final sometime in 2015. So we're close to having that, and as we can get it, when it's been validated and statistically analyzed, then we'll be sharing that with folks as we can and certainly incorporate into this discussion. So I appreciate that, and others have brought that up as well. Even that will not be the end all because, as I think Cynthia said earlier, we tried to get more product types into the sampling, and we got some, but we didn't get all types. It's a matter of function of how much money do we have for that work and how many different samples can we take of how many different categories. So it'll be an improvement for sure, and there'll be, I'm sure, some changes in a lot of these numbers. So others have provided additional information on some of these product types, like the gentleman here talking about I forgot.
The OCC.
The paraffin-coated OCC. So we will take all that information as well if you have it.
Yeah, and I'll just add, we absolutely recognized that we didn't have product-specific, especially for all the different packaging types, data available. So we did try to use what product-specific data we did have from the characterization study, and then use best judgment on what categories, existing categories from, our historic. We try to keep the same definitions year to year so the results are comparable. So I was using what was currently available, and I really tried to acknowledge that, especially also pointing out that although it's not perfect data, it still generally aligns with US EPA data showing paper and plastic as the two predominant material categories in the waste stream. So absolutely hear your point, though, that it did include many products that aren't packaging specifically and plastic.
Heidi?
Heidi Sanborn with the Product Stewardship Council. I still, after I heard everybody give their ideas after we gave ours, I really liked our team that had waste, we have a waste hauler and a local government and nonprofits and so forth, that we addressed a lot of the concerns that people kept raising, like only focus on the stuff that's a real problem and make it flexible and still get to the issue of today, which may not be the same issue of tomorrow for packaging. But, I think I totally agree with Alan that we need to focus on collaboration and partnerships. We've been saying this for years. I think the question is who's going to reach out to whom first and about what and what kind of pilots can we do? I don't think there's a hauler or a local government in this room that wouldn't partner tomorrow with industry to try and figure out a better way to do this and to get the costs down. So I would encourage the industry groups to really get serious about, coming up with some ideas, some pilot projects, something, because we're kind of running out of time. While we're sitting here, I got information, some whale just, came up on shore with 37 pounds of plastic in its stomach, and it's dead. And these are the kinds of things that just fire people up about doing something about this, whether it's rational or not. It's just the stuff that they see, and it gets upsetting. So I encourage everybody to come up with some ideas. That delays are probably not a good idea. You've probably all heard that the Alameda court case came down for Alameda pretty strongly, that local governments can now implement EPR for anything at the local level. Probably, definitely not optimal. I mean, we want harmonization, we want things that work. Even I think that, EPR for packaging in California is probably impossible right now with, the existing laws it's so complicated, it takes so long. But maybe something in the middle, something that people can agree on, focusing on the problem products, thinking through But we got to start talking now. The legislation, I think we heard this morning, somebody's talking about putting in bills already. We're kind of running out of time. So I would really encourage industry groups to reach out, talk to folks, talk to the haulers, talk to local governments, because I think you have a lot of willing people here in California that would really like to solve the problem without legislation.
Somebody earlier suggested a forum for manufacturers. Of course, manufacturers some are here and are quite welcome to be at today's forum and talk. But would maybe one of the things, based on what you just said, is to have a session where we're asking some of the industry associations to come in with ideas and have a wide discussion with a variety of stakeholders, so everybody hears everything and can kind of piggyback off of that. It's just talking off the top of my head. We don't know what our follow-up steps are on this today. But if that's something that would be useful to have local governments, NGOs, MRF operators, manufacturers, and trying to talk about some of the ideas that we've heard today and what is needed to get them going, maybe that's something that we can do as well. So. Anybody else want to say anything? Any of our other group leaders who spoke in the roundup sessions earlier, do you want to go into more detail on any of those ideas? Or do you all want me to let you go? I'll tell you what I'll do is Cynthia and I will briefly talk about next steps, because we don't have a lot to say on that at this point. And then if anybody thinks of something else they want to say, you're welcome to continue to say it. So, we started this journey, to use, I think, Alan's words and others. A year ago, we've had discussions on packaging for many years. We started talking about transport packaging. I think going back to one of Jared's big issues in transportation, we talked about transport packaging 15 years ago, 20 years ago. We've talked about packaging in many different ways, many different forums. There's been many different bills that have been proposed to deal with packaging of one sort or another. And again, from a CalRecycle perspective, we'll try to fine-tune the numbers. And so we can go back and forth on the numbers, but there's still a lot of material going into landfills that is packaging related, and a lot of material that is going into the environment that is packaging related. So that's still remains a primary driver. What the ultimate solution of that is, it's whether it's going to be voluntary efforts that we can help foster, or whether the legislature is going to say, we need to move in direction A or direction B, we're going to have to see. So we're certainly open to continuing all these discussions. Today, I think, was a step forward. Last year, we had a workshop, and again, we heard more about in terms of what are individual companies doing, what are some of the packaging innovations that are happening. Today, we had a lot of discussion on policy. So we want to invite you, any of you, who want to have continued discussions with us, certainly to contact Cynthia or me, and we're willing to meet with you at any time. We definitely want to hear about get written comments on any of the topics that you talked about today, and we want to hear about more about the voluntary initiatives that, especially if they are designed to really move forward over the next short period of time and achieve substantial recovery of these materials and incorporation into a value-added chain. And how do we do that? Short of that, or in addition to that, we don't have plans at this point for a next workshop. That's not to say that we won't have one, but we really need to step back from today, collate all these ideas, and get them back out to you in the form of at least some summary notes that here's all the ideas and concerns that we heard today, and we will pledge to do that. I don't know how long it'll take, but we'll get it out relatively soon so that everybody sees the ideas out there on the public domain and can either say, oh, you got it, or you forgot about this, and they can continue to add on the discussion. We'll be continue to discuss internally the ideas that we heard today about the different mandatory approaches, the different voluntary approaches, the new ideas that were discussed a little bit earlier, and talk to our director about next steps. So I don't have anything in terms of a date definitive that we would have another workshop. We're not planning at this point. We don't have any definitive plans to put out the next iteration of a paper. We will certainly put out the notes, and then we're going to go from there. So this is a great time to continue to be involved with us, whether it's industry associations or individual manufacturers or MRF operators or Patty's case, some of the folks who are dealing with plastics processing. Keep talking to us and providing us with information. Do you want to add? So I will open up again. Does anybody want to add anything? One last pot shot or anything like that? Got to take her. Somebody fell for it. 1 sec. List of attendees. We will.
I'd encourage anyone who hasn't already to drop a card in the little basket out front, or leave it with me. We didn't do any online registration for in-person attendees. We do have a list of the webinar participants, so happy to put that out with the notes, the summary notes at the same time.
Yeah, hang on, George. Okay. I got it, Jim. Jim, I got it. You got it? Yeah. PowerPoint on the website. It is available already. Can you, on our homepage, I believe, do you know, on the public notice for this
It's on
workshop?
the same public notice link that had the agenda and that we're posting comments. All of the documents from this workshop will be there.
And if you can't find that, since sometimes our website people have a little trouble navigating it, let us know. We'll steer you to it, but we'll do that on the side. Okay, so I want to thank you all, those on the webinar who listened in, and those of you who are in the room for a pretty darn robust discussion today. Thank you for your candor. Thank you for your input. Thanks to Zoe, Amanda, and John for working with Jared and continuing to work with us from Region 9. Thanks again to all of you for participating, and we'll look forward to continued discussions on this topic. Thanks.